For the first time after missing 23, he is coming off the bench tonight.
To put his hand up like, hey, I'm 6'10" and I'm a sweet shooter. Find me. It's money. He looks like Kevin Durant.
I can show you who's boss, show you how to take off. Yeah, sit back, little homie, just to watch.
Kevin Durant's return to the court successful on all fronts.
Kevin Durant, welcome back.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into First Take. It's Thursday, and we have a little special something for you today. It's a First Take, Her Take over. You know what it is. I'm Charlie Arnold. We got the ladies, also my co-hosts on the First Take, Her Take podcast joining us today, Kimberly A. Martin, Shanae Ogumake. They'll be with us in just a second. Also, Brian Windhorst going to be with us to kick off the show because you know we got to start with the perfection that is Kevin Durant. He came back last night after being gone for 23 games. Did not miss a step. So here's KD after the game.
I expected to come out here and play the way I played. I wasn't trying to ease into the game. I just wanted to go out there and dive right into the action. I mean, the game was already fast-paced already, so from watching it from the bench, I knew exactly how I needed to approach it. So, but it was pretty cool coming off the bench, I can't lie. But it was also good to play in front of the fans as well.
All righty, he is ready to go. He looked amazing last night. Shanae and Brian here with us right now. Shanae, I want to start with you. You think a healthy Nets team is a lock to win the title this year?
Okay, Charlie. Yeah, shout out to First Take, Her Take over. Let's go. And hey,
yeah.
Brian. Now, on paper, okay, the Brooklyn Nets, based on what we saw yesterday, my goodness, good Lord, they are a cheat code. I mean, it started with Blake Griffin. You saw that signature bounce back on the dunk. You had LaMarcus Aldridge with his beautiful turnaround fadeaway. And the main event, Kevin Durant finally back. It's just not fair. He was a plus 22 off of the bench, 17 points, in 19 minutes. This could be one of the best offenses we'll ever witness in NBA history. But, however, I am not there yet for two reasons to say that they are a lock. One, health. The big three have only played 7 games together still, and they only have 20 games left, I believe, to get it right. And it's such a small sample size to get prepared for really a title run. And two, let's talk about defense, because right now the Nets are 25th. In defensive rating. No team has ever won a championship with a defensive rating that low. I know they're loading up on offense, but defense, when the game slows down in the playoffs, will be crucial. And their defense will absolutely be tested because this is the best version of what? The Philadelphia 76ers that we're seeing right now. This is the best version of the Milwaukee Bucks. After they locked down Giannis, Chris Middleton, and now Drew Holiday, the Lakers are the defending champs, and there are a number of young teams making statements like the Jazz and the Suns. So when all the Brooklyn Nets players, they finally suit up, walk out there on the floor, and work to address their biggest question, their defense, that's when I'll say they're going to be a lock. But until then, we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I don't know if you can say anything in the NBA is ever a lock, but this is one of the most impressive teams I've seen in my 18 years covering the NBA. Wow. I've never seen a team that has this type of offensive firepower. They are just absolutely so redundant. And when Kevin said that he was expecting to play well, I understand that because he's come back from other big injuries in his career and has played great immediately out of the gates. His game is a game that's kind of timeless. You don't have to be in great rhythm when you have an incredible offensive skill set like that. And Shanae, I agree. Their defense is a concern. But, they played pretty good defense last night. Nobody's been able to slow Zion down for months. They held Zion down, and I don't think that they're going to win games with their defense, but with their overall firepower, I think it's going to be really hard to beat them 4 out of 7. You may get them on a night where maybe one of their guys is dinged up, or you may get them on a night when their defense collapses or their older guys don't play so well, but I don't think you're going to do it 4 out of 7, and that's the name of the game in the NBA playoffs.
And Brian, this is where I want to sort of bring up another factor that people might be sleeping on. While we really love the offensive firepower that the Brooklyn Nets have, or just offense period with the way the game is officiated, I remember when I was playing, the refs had this meeting in preseason and they're like, all right, you can touch the defender once. We called it the hot stove rule, but after that, you can't touch him again. And guess what? Now the numbers have gone up with shooting, but defense is really interesting. And maybe it's the Final Four, the national championship carryover that I'm seeing with defenses winning championships in the collegiate level. But really, the Lakers, people sleep on the fact that the Lakers have the #1 defensive rating right now in the NBA, that the Utah Jazz, also a top and elite defensive team. A lot of the top teams in the NBA, apart, even the Philadelphia 76ers, apart from the offense, the top defensive teams in the NBA, they're doing it on both ends. And so when you look at that aspect of the game, Brian, do you think that this is the Lakers making a move to get Andre Drummond, a guy that averages like 13 rebounds a game, now bolstering that already #1 overall defense in the Lakers? I see the Lakers making a play at defense, knowing that Brooklyn is set up historically for offense.
This is going to be a test of history here, because historically you are correct. You have to be about a top 10 or 11 defensive team to be an NBA champion. The record speaks for itself. But we are playing in a season where we are seeing historically off-the-charts offense. 7 or 8 of the top 10 offensive seasons by team in NBA history are happening right now. I scan the box scores every single night, guys, and every single night there are teams that are shooting 53, 54% and losing. There are some teams whose records when they shoot 50% or better are around 500. In the past, you shot 50% in a game, that means you're almost going to win probably 85% of the time. And so the question is, when we get to the postseason, when we know you can prepare, some of these teams have had single-digit practices for the entire season to this point, since the year started. When in the postseason you can actually practice and game plan in between games, will we see a return to normalcy? The Lakers better hope so, because I don't think the Lakers offensively, which is what their weakness is. You're right, their defense is spectacular, but they can't bring it every night offensively. I don't think they can do it 4 out of 7 times. So they're going to have to hope that things return to what we normally see in the postseason, because if they don't, this is set for the Nets to win it.
So, Wendy, let's talk about the offensive power of the Nets. It's off the charts, but are you at all concerned about the chemistry between the big three? Because as we know, they've only played 7 games together this season so far.
The only chemistry I'm worried about is Kyrie and James Harden. I'm not worried about Kevin Durant at all. He has shown repeatedly that he can play with different lineups in different roles. Durant is one of the most malleable superstars I've ever seen. LeBron, because of all the guys he can defend, maybe a little bit more, but Durant can be so many different things to so many different teammates. I'm not worried about him at all. And I think their other guys, their older guys, are there knowing they're playing a role. The whole thing has been, can Harden and Kyrie coexist together, sharing the ball? And right out of the gates, I think Kyrie yielded to Harden. I think it was like the second or third week they were playing together, Kyrie said, James, you take the ball, you run our offense, I'll play off the ball, which was no small thing for him to say, even though that makes sense because you look at the way Harden was playing, you say, heck yeah, this guy's an MVP as a point guard. Kyrie left LeBron James because he didn't want to play that way. And so as soon as I saw that, now granted, it's tenuous because Kyrie tends to change his opinion and mood on things at times. But once I saw that, I said, look out for these Nets. And Kyrie and Harden do have quite a bit of time together so far.
I actually think that a lot of people are worried about that relationship, Kyrie Irving and James Harden, when they need not to be, because obviously these guys have unique personas that sort of make them polarizing figures. James Harden, with how he plays the game, well, he settled that by, taking a backseat and figuring out whatever role this team, the Brooklyn Nets, needs to win. Kyrie Irving, maybe for things not necessarily tied to the basketball court, but anytime something needs to get done, they find a way. Kyrie Irving, I think at the start of the season, it was clear that he wanted to be the guy, that this was his team. And we saw it through his performances. The thing that actually stood out to me the most, Brian, is actually when James Harden goes out because of the hamstring, what does Kyrie do to respond? Drops 40 points and knows to flip the switch and take over. These guys have each other's backs in a way that we don't really acknowledge all the time in the media. And I think that's what makes them special, sort of the chip on the shoulder mentality that each and every one of them carry. So I'm not necessarily worried about, the personalities meshing. I think health, number one, first and foremost, will be the only thing that deters this team from a title.
Yeah, Chiney, I think you're absolutely right, because according to BPI, with the healthy Big Three, the Nets have a 22% chance to win the title. The only team with better odds as of this point are the Jazz with 24.5%. But let's talk about the Jazz, shall we? Because these West Coast games are killing my sleep schedule, but they're so good that you kind of have to stay up for them. Last night was that case, an overtime thriller between the top two seeds in the West. The Suns besting the Jazz 117-113, and it was the extra period that made the difference. He had 35 points. Meanwhile, Donovan Mitchell finished with 41. Okay, Chiney, who is the better player right now? Is it Devin Booker or is it Donovan Mitchell?
Save you, Charlie. You'd sleep, come to the West Coast, the game starts.
I would love to. When do I get the invite? You and
PM.
Stephen A. on the West Coast having a good time. You leave me here in New York.
I know, we got you, girl. You're my girl, so of course I always got a room for you out here. But, watching these games were great. We finally had an NBA night that we really deserved and are excited as we build momentum towards the playoffs. And now, both Donovan Mitchell and Devin Booker, I feel like they knew that we were going to do this. I feel like they knew that we were going to debate this performance because they both showed out. Both guys shot the ball over 30 times. Both are two-time All-Stars. Both are 24-ish years old. And right now, I think it's really easy to argue that the Phoenix Suns are surging. It's apparent. And a lot of that is due to Chris Paul's leadership. And look, Devin Booker, do not mince my words. Devin Booker is a bucket. But from a team perspective, I know that they just took a loss, but the Utah Jazz have been the real deal this entire season. And the more complete player right now, probably because he has to carry that role, is Donovan Mitchell, just because he's a combination of everything you need right now in the NBA: scoring, moving the ball as a point guard. I mean, his athleticism, one of the most athletic players in the league under the rim, but then obviously he can dunk over the rim, working to become a better defender. The Utah Jazz are the only team, I believe, that's been top 5 in both offensive and defensive rating this entire season. And that'll shock a lot of people. And I'll say this, it really moved me in a different direction when Steve Kerr played them a while back and said, hey, this team, the Utah Jazz, reminds me of my team a couple years ago, talking about the Warriors, how they got it done as a team defensively from that perspective, but then also just the amount of threes. I think they lead the NBA in made threes. So overall, this is a solid team. Donovan Mitchell is a complete player, and I think that's why you're seeing them atop of the NBA in the standings.
Yes, using the word better makes it tough because you have to define when you want them, how you're evaluating them. So when I talk to a couple of scouts about this question, they say, look, on a night in April, do I think that Donovan Mitchell is maybe better to have a chance to win? Yeah. But what about in a playoff series? And the thing that scouts like about Booker versus Mitchell is he's just bigger. He's 6'5", 6'6", and that makes it a little bit easier for him to create his own shot. Donovan is spectacular with his footwork, and he's developed his three-point shot. In fact, Donovan actually shoots the three quite a few percentage points better than Booker does, which I don't think any of us would have expected 2 years ago. But in the end of playoff games, when you need to get that shot creation, Donovan has to work so hard. Now, granted, he has shown he can work hard and deliver it, but Booker's size and his little bit more flexibility on defense, I think might give him a little bit of an edge. But boy, I'm nervous saying that because I saw how Donovan played in the playoffs last year. He put together a couple of stunning performances, and I feel like he's got more of that in the future. And, he's got some more playoff experience than Booker has. That's the big thing about the Suns. That's why Chris Paul is so big for them. None of their core players outside Chris Paul and Jay Crowder have stepped on a playoff basketball court yet. And so that's going to be a really important thing. How does Booker handle that postseason pressure? Because he's got the package to be a guy who can win a team a playoff series.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when you compare these two players, they have different strengths, but both are at very similar points in their career with opportunities to prove themselves, Brian. Now, of course, when it comes to the final shot, we all know most people will want to see Devin Booker with that. We saw that in the bubble with their run that has carried over to this season. But one thing I will say about Donovan is that the weight that he's had to carry, he's had to lead this team offensively as the primary go-to. And he's been forced to improve his game, as you mentioned, with the three-point shot. He has taken that next step forward from last year to this year in a way that Devin Booker, playing with Chris Paul, sort of has the luxury of being able to, spot up and shoot. And now they have their own playoff run. It's been fun. I think it's tough to compare both. They have very different strengths. But overall, both guys are doing exactly what they need to do for their teams to be successful.
Well, last night, Devin Booker did a lot, and he did it with the help of Chris Paul. The two combined for 64 points. That's the highest total that they've combined for as teammates this season. So who knows? Maybe we're getting a little preview of what we can expect in the Western Conference Finals. Who thought we'd be saying that, right? All right, Wendy, thank you so much for your time. We always appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, we got a lot more to come right here on First Take. Jalen Hurts, he is a young buck, but he has earned the respect of his elders. Eagles Super Bowl champ Lane Johnson joining First Take to talk about his quarterback this upcoming season. Plus, we now have more info on the crash that left Tiger unable to compete in the Masters. Michael Collins joining the show to talk about the legend's absence. Coming up next. A guy who shares his name and draft class, wide receiver Jalen Reagor. So here's Reagor talking about his quarterback this week.
It was something I put a great time in when I was younger, watching and maybe doing a little bit of backyard wrestling, but that's about it. Nothing too serious.
All right, you have a finishing move in mind?
I don't know. We're still developing right now, still in developmental terms.
All right. Well, for now, we'll let you do the moves on the football field. But how is Microband 24 keeping you busy this offseason as well?
Well, as you know, we have this barn. I have lots of guys coming in to train. So Microban is a way to eliminate bacteria, eliminate the COVID virus up to 24 hours. And it's a way to honor those that are in our communities on the front lines every day. We recognized a woman named Colleen out of Bensalem, Pennsylvania, who's been with Acme for 10 plus years, and really just honoring the people that are allowing to kind of go back to normalcy like we had in the season. I don't think the season would have been a success like it has been without the people like that. So teaming up with them was a no-brainer, and continue to do it in the future.
All right, we like it. Staying healthy, stay this season.
The only difference between me and Jalen is my arms are just a little bit stronger. He just has a little bit more accuracy. But, man, we're excited to have him. I think you saw a glimpse of what he can do the 4 or 5 game stretch that he was in. Obviously, versatile with his legs, can do things outside the pocket, extending plays. And like Jalen was talking about, just his aura and his presence, he carries himself like a veteran. And I can say that about him.
Lane, you obviously are coming back from an ankle injury. What have you done to get back to this point, and what are you hoping for these New Look Eagles?
Yeah, I'm hoping for a complete return. I should be fully cleared within the next month, but really had a tightrope surgery and a deltoid repair, so really kind of a reconstruction of my left ankle, but everything's going good. We start OTAs April 19th, so I'm pretty sure most of it's going to be all virtual until we know otherwise. But we're excited about the new coach, Coach Sirianni. We're excited to get everybody back in the building and get this thing rolling.
And speaking of your new coach, head coach Nick Sirianni, he's really bringing with him a pretty young coaching staff. So for you, as a veteran on this team, how do you think that this dynamic might change from seasons of the past to now?
You know, it's different. You know, with the NFL, it's crazy how coaches come in and out, players come in and out. But I can tell you a lot of energy is coming in. I feel we'll get acquainted real soon. But offensively, I know we weren't where we needed to be last year. And moving forward, you know, we have big expectations on ourselves. We're not where we need to be, and we know that. But moving forward, we're confident with where we're at and who we're getting in the draft, and moving forward from there.
All right, yeah, let's talk about the draft. Lane, who do you hope that the Eagles pick with their number 12 draft pick? Or what position, even if you don't know exactly which player?
I don't care who it is. I just want a baller. That's all I want. So I don't know who that's going to be. We got somebody snagging the ball in the end zone.
Well said.
Getting the quarterback, it don't matter to me.
Just want a baller. We like it.
All right, Lane, you don't care who you guys take exactly, but do you care about the 17-game schedule now that you guys have to play?
As long as they have a 17-week paycheck going with it, I think everybody can be fine with that. I know a lot of guys weren't thrilled with it, but it is what it is. Another way to extend the season, but I think they're shortening the preseason from what I understand, so it is what it is.
Want a baller, a shot caller, want to get paid. I love you, Lane. Thinking about your team overall, what do you think is going to be the #1 focus for you guys both bouncing back, this coming season?
Probably just getting Jalen, familiar with just, being QB1. And, whoever we draft, it's going to be difficult to kind of get the continuity if it's not in person, but you would like to get workouts, before training camp starts, get those relationships built and move on from there. And that's really what it's about. I feel like teams that play the best, that do the best down the stretch are the guys that have the strongest bond and play hard for each other. So that's where we're at. And really the upcoming months, we're just going to play it by ear as far as what we're allowed to do.
All right, Lane, you have said that in your heart you feel like professional wrestling is something that you would want to pursue. As you know, I put some years in at the WWE. So I'm curious, if you were a professional wrestler, what would your persona be?
There's many avenues you could go down. You could be the good guy, but I feel like the bad guy would be my role. So I don't know what my name would be. I don't know how that would all play out, but definitely been a childhood dream, something I grew up watching, and just as far as entertainment, something to look forward to. It was something I put a great time in when I was younger, watching and maybe doing a little bit of backyard wrestling, but that's about it. Nothing too serious.
All right, you have a finishing move in mind?
I don't know. We're still developing right now, still in developmental terms.
All right. Well, for now, we'll let you do the moves on the football field. But how is Microband 24 keeping you busy this offseason as well?
Well, as you know, we have this barn. I have lots of guys coming in to train. So Microban is a way to eliminate bacteria, eliminate the COVID virus after 24 hours. And it's a way to honor those.
I will continue to focus on my recovery and family and thank everyone for the overwhelming support and encouragement I've received throughout this difficult time. So with that, let's bring in our favorite golf analyst, Mr. Michael Collins, live from Augusta. And it looks beautiful out there, Michael. But obviously there's one thing missing, and that is Tiger Woods, obviously a heartbreaker for everybody involved. So what are players saying right now about Tiger's absence?
Well, he was missed the most probably Tuesday night because that's the Champions Dinner night. And so there were a lot of guys that were talking about how much he was going to be missed at the Champions Dinner, and they thought they might be able to do something digitally with him, which they didn't do. But that was pretty much it for Tiger Woods leading up to this event. Of course, everyone knows that this place is iconic to Tiger Woods, and the last time that he won here, how he won here, the hug that he had with his son Charlie behind the 18th green. They remember that iconic moment. But quite honestly, right now, when it comes to Tiger Woods, everyone is just wanting him to recover and become healthy again, and it's got nothing to do with golf or even him here at the Masters.
Michael, how great was it to see Lee Elders out there and have his accomplishments?
Yeah, the one thing that I've been saying is it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. So the fact that the Masters brought Lee Elder and had him up there as an honorary starter along with Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player is why I have this hat on, because there was a bunch of people, including Chris Tucker, a bunch of former champions of the Masters, other players, you name it. Everyone was out there to see this historic moment. If you remember why there's 1975 on here, the Masters changed their rule in 1974, and if you won a tournament, that automatically got you into the Masters. So Lee Elder wins the tournament in 1974, and in 1975 becomes the first African American to tee it up at the Masters, breaking that color barrier. And it meant a lot. Golf has come a long way from Lee Elder to Tiger Woods, but I can tell you there were so many African American faces. I've never seen that many brothers and sisters up on the first tee here at Augusta National, especially for that ceremonial first shot. Steph Curry and his brand are the ones that came out with this hat. And there was a bunch of them given out to a bunch of people up on the first tee. So you see the 1975 here. On the back, you see the Steph Curry logo and brand. Steph had it on today on one of his Instagram posts. And on the side of the hat, you can see a saying from Lee Elder, "Stay the course," which basically tells us all, we ain't there yet, especially here in golf. But you know what? We're on the right course. And again, it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. And Augusta National and the Masters are doing a lot more than they ever have before in trying to grow the game of golf, especially in the African American platform.
And that conversation really continues to the present day because, as you mentioned, Masters chairman Fred really expressed his reasons against calls for a boycott based on Georgia's new controversial voting law. So what is the general sense that you really witnessed from players and from personnel involved about the controversy?
You know, most of the players out here on the PGA Tour are not from Georgia. So very few of them are versed on the working ins and outs of that Georgia voter law. So most of them said the same thing. I haven't read up enough about it. That's the one thing that I will always give credit to for the guys that I'm friends with out on the PGA Tour. They don't want to speak without knowing everything about everything. So most of them didn't want to speak on this. But I will say this, and this is what a 23-year-old Colin Morikawa, who's one of the favorites this weekend, has already won a PGA championship. Morikawa said this, as an Asian American in our society with everything that's going on right now. He was okay with the fact that this tournament's staying here at Augusta, but he wants to have that open dialogue so that everyone can talk about what's going on here in Georgia. And it'll actually bring a bigger focus by keeping the tournament here and making people talk about it. And in that sense, then, you will get more out of having the tournament here than by taking it away. And the thought that that came from a 23-year-old's mouth kind of made me sit down for a minute.
All right, so let's talk about the actual tournament, Michael. Bryson DeChambeau, obviously one of the favorites. How likely is it that he pulls through and wins the Masters?
I'm not counting on that guy whatsoever. You got to remember, Bryson DeChambeau is the one everybody wants to see hit that driver because he hits it so far. But he's also the guy who in November came out here and said, you know, this is normally a par 72, but for me it's a par 67. Well, the golf karma gods kicked him in the teeth for that one. And now he came here this year and said, I got a new secret weapon, a new driver head in the bag. Bryson, you're not supposed to say that until after you win. Saying it before you win is like being the villain in a movie, sitting down the hero and tying him up and going, and now I'm going to take 12 minutes and explain to you exactly how my world domination plan is going to work and how I'm going to kill you. And in those 12 minutes, the hero's going to untie himself, get up, knock out the villain, and take him to jail. So don't expect big things from Bryson DeChambeau other than hitting that driver. And this place, this course, quite seriously, it's a second shot and putting golf course. Like Rory McIlroy hits the driver spectacular, but the reason that he doesn't do well around here is because his short game and putting. And it's the same with Bryson. This golf course doesn't care how far you hit it. That's not what it's about. It's about hitting that second shot onto the correct part of the green, and if you miss the green, now what do? Can you get up and down to save par? Can you hit that miracle flop shot or make that 25-footer that's got 8 foot of break in it? Bryson hasn't proven that yet. And oh yeah, this is the one golf course where they don't allow players to use those green reading books. Bryson thrives on that book, and this week, he doesn't have it.
Villain, good guy. Michael, I'm curious. Dustin Johnson is the reigning champion, but what chance do you give him of repeating as champion?
I give him a good chance, and I'll tell you why. This is the tournament he wanted to win more than any other tournament out there. And now that that weight has been lifted off his chest, he feels like he's playing free. He's got house money. And think about this. Because he won in November, here's how Augusta works when you win the Masters. You get to take the green jacket,
Lose him? All right, well, we just lost Michael. But yeah, you can catch him live at Augusta National coming from, oh, there he is. Michael, you're back. Yeah, we still need to hear your answer.
All that good weather.
You're like a superhero. You just disappear and reappear.
Secrets?
Yeah.
I start telling secrets about the Masters jacket, and they're like, yo, cut the feed, cut the feed. So as simple as this, Dustin has only got to keep his green jacket for about 5 months, right? And so he's going to be thinking to himself, well, that ain't fair, bro. Like, everybody else gets to keep the jacket for a year. Why I got to get mine back? And Dustin now loves this place, and that weight being off his chest, he's thinking to himself, you know what? I think I might keep this green jacket for another year, for real calendar year.
Okay, process of elimination here. Which golfer not named DeChambeau, not named Dustin Johnson, do you think has the best chance to win it all?
All right, I'm going to give you 3 names, okay? Number 1, Justin Thomas. Justin Thomas, coming off of that Players Championship win, he loves this place and would like nothing better than the green jacket. Jordan Spieth, who won last week in the Valero Texas Open, and the last time was good about his game. But the story that I couldn't get out of my head when I picked my winner on ESPN.com was Rocky 2. You remember Rocky 2? When Rocky and Adrian have the baby, and Adrian's in a coma, and she wakes up, and they hold the baby for the first time, and she tells Rocky, come here. I want you to do something for me. What do you want me to do? And she goes, win. John Rahm, I think, is going to be playing Rocky this week. There's nothing he'd like better to do for wife Kelly and that new baby boy than to bring home the green jacket.
All right, and there you have it, straight from Augusta National, Michael Collins' prediction for this year's Masters. All right, Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Please, I'm begging you, please go get a pimento cheese sandwich for me. They're my favorite.
No, egg salad all day.
Oh,
Egg salad.
okay, all right. We'll have to disagree on that one. But, hey, we thank you for your time, and have fun out there. All right, let's keep it moving. With the Bucks bringing back the squad, is there anything that can stand in Tom Brady's way of getting ring number 8? Damian Woody joining the show to debate it next with the ladies. Plus, should the Cowboys focus on finding another weapon for Dak in the upcoming draft, or do they need to focus on the D? Don't go anywhere. More First Take coming your way. Is ending its sponsorship outright. While the NFL is said to be investigating the allegations, no other major action has been taken yet by the league. And here to join the debate, we've got Damian Woody. And Kimberly, I want to start with you here. Do you think that Watson needs to be put on the NFL commissioner's exempt list immediately?
Charlie, no, I don't. And here's why. Because the commissioner's exempt list wasn't designed for the off season. It was designed for when guys are in season, for, preventing guys from practicing or playing in games while a situation needs to be resolved. I think we can debate how this looks for Watson, all of these women, whether, do we anticipate him starting in week 1 or being on a team? That is a separate conversation than the exempt list. I think with him, I feel like people get on the league for how it handles situations, especially situations involving domestic violence or any issues with the treatment of women. And the league has sort of been criticized for how it doles out punishment. Sometimes it seems arbitrary. Sometimes it seems excessive. You talk about Deflategate. But at the end of the day, we can't just ask the league to act for the sake of acting. The league has been well criticized for just giving perfunctory statements. Yes, we are deeply disturbed by this. Yes, it's a statement, but those words really said nothing because, yeah, we should all be disturbed by these allegations. But after reading that statement, did anybody feel better or feel like, okay, those were the words we needed this time? No, because at this point, the league can't do it. It doesn't know anything. It's still investigating. And you can't, at this point, there are no practices, there are no games. So you put him on the list for what? He's not at a facility right now. So I think that the league adding him to the commissioner's exempt list would just be another step that makes the league look like, oh, it's just doing something to do something. And that's not what's needed right now. As the situation plays out, if this escalates, if more women come forward, if criminal charges are brought against him, then the league can actually do something. But this gray, murky area where no one really knows anything, that's a difficult spot for the league to be in.
Listen, I agree with Kimberly here. I think it would be a totally different situation, and Kimberly touched upon it, if we were in training camp, where now, the NFL is really preparing for the season, or even at the beginning of the regular season. Then I think that's what the commissioner's exempt list is for, to kind of put this guy, in a position where he's, where the NFL can continue to evaluate the situation and kind of make this guy disappear from being a distraction, not only to the organization, but for the rest of the league at that time. We're in the off season where, we haven't even hit the NFL drafts yet. So I think there's plenty of time for the league to continue its investigation into these allegations against Deshaun Watson. Obviously, the team is doing it. But I just don't think that, like Kimberly said, just to stash a guy on the exempt list just to do it, I don't think that's the purpose of the list right now. And there's plenty of time before we hit actual games, before I think the NFL has to consider making that type of move.
Well, I think the purpose of the list is really interesting, hearing both you, Woody, and Kimberly's perspective on it. But based on the past few days, I just think overall, as a woman watching what has happened and following it, I know, Kimberly, you're a reporter, and when it started, it was tough to digest. And then now, totaling up to 22 civil lawsuits, it's hard for us to fathom these things. And then now, yesterday or the day before, we've seen some of the victims, and to put a face, to put feelings and emotions to those names that we have been reporting, it's an emotional process for all of us as fans of the sport. This is really tough to process. And again, we'd be remiss to not say, as women here in the sports world, we stand by women that bravely tell their stories, knowing that that is truly the most difficult thing to do. But we also know that there is due process of law, and that Deshaun Watson will probably have his opportunity, because it's been kind of radio silence since, his lawyers and his representatives have said, hey, this is not what it seems to be. Well, that's why the law steps in to handle that process. The legal process plays out. And it's really interesting to see also yesterday that Nike has, quote, suspended his contract, while Beats has terminated his endorsement contract. And in unprecedented situations like this, I think that's where the public pressure to do something, even if it is putting him on the commissioner's exempt list, while it is, not necessarily its purpose, I think as time goes on, because this is a lengthy process that's being reported on, and just knowing the legal process, it's going to be hard to sort of quell that public angst. And I think it is uniquely positioned in moments like this, maybe to reevaluate and look, because obviously that exempt list, and this is where I go back to you, Kimberly, means he would potentially maintain his salary. He just would not be an active player currently. And so based on the gravity of the women's claims, by removing him temporarily from the Texans, it seems like a lot of people are bringing up the commissioner's exempt list to sort of be that vehicle to address the gravity, but also know that it gives due process a chance to play out as well.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this is, the sponsorship deals. What's different about the sponsorship deals? Nike took a stand and Beats, and it feels like, I think the public might feel like, well, the NFL is eerily quiet. They're not doing anything. But Deshaun Watson being affiliated with those brands can hurt them financially. Right now, we have no practices. We have no games. As Woody said, we're not even at the draft yet. So Deshaun Watson is hidden from you. He's not, when it comes time for criminal charges, if it comes to that, because guys, nothing's been proven or unproven to this point. So let's be very clear about that. But when it comes to an issue of financial dollars and your affiliation to a particular athlete, that it makes sense that sponsors would pull out, because you can sell headphones at any time, right? Well, the season's not happening. There's no training camp right now. Like, the league literally is in a position of, we have to wait and see, because if the league were to suddenly defend him or say, you know what, the way this is going, he probably did it. Let's move him to the exempt list or suspend him. Like, we haven't even gotten far in this process, even though it feels like every single day there's another lawsuit or finally we have a woman speaking publicly and detailing the emotional toll it took on her. But right now, you know, women tell the truth and should be believed, and there's women who lie, and there's men who should believe and get falsely accused. You know, this is a very like murky situation, and you have to be really, really careful when you want people to start acting when we don't have enough information.
Yeah. And Kimberly, you had mentioned that the NFL was being eerily quiet. NFL spokesperson Brian McCarthy did speak up this week in regards to these allegations, and he called them, quote, deeply disturbing. But really, that's all that's been said by the NFL thus far. Woody, I want to know, though, if this situation continues down the path it's on right now, which is very unfortunate, do you believe that Watson will be placed on the exempt list before week 1?
Yeah, listen, if this situation isn't resolved and this the investigations continue on, you know, right up until the season, I do believe that the commissioner will put Deshaun Watson on the exempt list, simply because you don't want that type of distraction when your season is basically starting. So I think that if this situation continues to linger, that Deshaun Watson he'll find himself on that exempt list.
Okay, so one more thing to add, along with the Nike deal, along with the Beats by Dre deal, also Reliant Energy, which owns the naming rights to the Texans Stadium in Houston. They are also saying that Watson will no longer be a brand ambassador for them. They do add, though, that their partnership that it currently stands was scheduled to end prior to these allegations coming out, but they said they do not plan on working with the quarterback moving forward. So a lot of things happening in regards to Deshaun Watson and his partnerships right now. All right, Damian, you are sticking with us because we still have a lot more NFL to get to, including talking about one of your former teammates. You know, with the Bucs bringing back the squad, is there anything that can stand in Tom Brady's way of getting ring number 8? We debate it. Plus, should the Cowboys focus on finding another weapon for Dak in the upcoming draft, or do they need to focus on the defense? Stay put. More First Take on the way.
But once you stop, you can't go back and do it. I got some more football in me, not a lot, and I know that, but what I got left, I'm gonna give everything I got.
All right, Damian Woody's still here with us, and Tom Brady, he wants to keep it going, and guess what? He's got all of his weapons this upcoming season to have a very successful run yet again. So, Kimberly, what could stand in the way of Tom Brady getting that number 8 ring?
Guys, only 2 things are going to stop Tom Brady from getting another Super Bowl, and that is history and Father Time. Man's about to be 44 years old, so he's getting up there, but if anybody's making 40 look good, it's him, right? But also history, because how many times have we seen back-to-back, defending Super Bowl champions win again? Only 7 times, but the last team to do it was Tom Brady and those 2003, 2004 Patriots. So I feel like if I'm Brady, at this point, he is so sickening with how happy he is. I mean, this guy is loving life, is loving Florida, is loving being paired, getting all 22 of their starters back and their specialists back. There's really they should be the favorites. They really should. And honestly, this dude, I'm not going to make the mistake of betting against Tom. He's not going to make me look stupid again. We've had conversations about, is Tom Brady done?
By the way, I won the Super Bowl prediction on the podcast. First Take, Her Take, everybody, just to put it out there.
All right.
You remember that? Remember when you two?
Yes. Yes, we remember, because you won't let us forget. We remember, girl. No, it's true. No, you were right. And they are, to me, they're the favorite because of this team. It's loaded. And honestly, Brady, why can't he win 8?
Well, listen,
Woody, talk your ish, Mr. Patriot, Mr. Super Bowl champ.
Don't worry about that. I'm gonna talk it all right. I'm gonna talk it because I was with the Patriots when they won in 2001 and in 2003. Let me tell you something. Tom Brady, to me, there's one thing that could get in the way, and that's obviously injuries, because football is a contact sport. But if you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I mean, guys, they got a lot of really good things going for them. They were returning all 22 starters on both offense and defense. That is, when you're talking about a team coming off of the Super Bowl, that is extremely rare that you got everyone coming back for the following year. So they have that going for them. But I will say this. The road to repeating is extremely hard because, like Coach Belichick used to tell us, every team, every year is different. You can't count on the things that happened last year for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to replicate themselves this year. And what I will tell you is that in 2002, when I was with the New England Patriots, we missed the playoffs. Why? Because, number one, things didn't break our way like they usually do in a Super Bowl run, but also the way your opponents play you after a Super Bowl is much different because they view you as a Super Bowl champ. The way you look at them on film and the way they come out and play you is totally different. These teams this year are going to play the Tampa Bay Bucks totally different. It's going to be extremely difficult, but if there's anyone that can do it, it's definitely Tom Brady.
You know what's wild? I should have known better, okay? I played fantasy football for the first time this year. I had the Tampa Bay defense, which really helped propel them to the Super Bowl. I should have known better in my pick because then I'd be Charlie instead of myself and Kimberly trying to rub it in.
Not everybody can be Charlie, Janae. You know this.
You're right.
One and
You're
only.
Right. This is true. But my favorite bite-sized human being. We love you. But it's crazy. And Woody, you talked about it because I think the pathway just seems so there, so readily available for Tom. I mean, you mentioned returning all 22 starters on offense and defense, that defense that I loved that appeared in the Super Bowl. And that's a first, by the way, in the NFL salary cap era. That tells you that Tom Brady really has that juice, that magic. And you even look at the NFC, the way things are shaping up. It's crazy that the Packers, it's crazy that the Seahawks, who have not shown their QBs enough love, sort of creating that angst that you don't want if you want to be able to take down Tom Brady and the Bucks. Like you've got Matt Stafford getting onboarded with the Rams. It's crazy that the NFC is sort of built for them to use their cohesion that they mastered in year one and run it back. But like you said, I mean, time, it just seems like when we talk about time and athletes, we're at the perfect intersection where science and advances. We have the TB12, the TB way, which is nuts for Tom Brady to sort of patent his own pathway that has helped him the same way LeBron James does it. It works to their advantage. So like you said, Woody, I think history, people do play you differently. I mean, I would love to say that I've won a championship. That's a goal for this coming year. But once you find success in the professional ranks, people sort of key in on that. People really key in on that, especially we know this through rookie seasons. Rookie seasons are great, and then the next year you adjust to the league. It happens for the champions as well.
Yeah, Damon, you mentioned everybody plays different, but the great thing about the Bucks is this was like a slow build. No off season together, no real time. That chemistry, it took some weeks for them to figure out this offense. Last year, if you remember, we were on TV like, what's going on with the Bucks? Like, what is Bruce Arians doing with Tom Brady? Just sit Tom Brady right there and say, do whatever you want. And what happened? In the second half of the season, they took off, and then Todd Bowles' defense took over in the NFC Championship game and in the Super Bowl. But guys, if you're the Bucks right now, and you're looking at the NFC South, the Panthers, they just got Sam Darnold, Teddy Bridgewater. What's going on with the Saints? Breeze isn't there. The Falcons, they got Matty Ice, true, but out of that division, to me, the Bucks are the favorite. Sinead touched on the Rams situation. Touched on Seattle, Aaron Rodgers, a lot of unhappy QBs. So I feel pretty good if I was Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and listen, as they should, Kimberly, because the one, when you're talking about the teams that usually have success, one factor is continuity. And that's what the Bucks are going to have. From top to bottom, they're going to have as much continuity as any other team in the National Football League. Again, they're going to have 22 starters back on that football team. So not only that, but the fact that now they head into an offseason where we're going to have OTAs, we're going to have mini camp, training camp. They didn't have that last year, and they were able to build their way to ultimately winning a Super Bowl. Now they get that. They get an actual offseason to really build on the chemistry that they had last year. So this should be a great sign, a great thing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, Tom Brady, the man is thriving professionally, personally. I mean, anytime you see this guy, he's got a smile on his face, and there's really no reason not to. Everything in Tom Brady's life seems to be going pretty good. All right, let's talk about the Cowboys, because Dak Prescott's getting some people excited. Well, not Stephen A. Smith, but there's some others he's getting people excited for. Here's some video that was released of him doing some passing drills earlier this week. Meanwhile, Cowboys owner and GM Jerry Jones is, quote, infatuated with Florida Gators tight end Kyle Pitts. That, according to our Chris Mortensen, the Cowboys currently have the number 10 pick in the 2021 draft, but Mortensen believes Jones could trade up to select Pitts. Damian, should the Cowboys draft Pitts, or do they need to be more focused on the defense?
Well, listen, I get it. We're talking about Jerry Jones, the Dallas Cowboys, and the star and all that. First of all, there's no way in hell that Kyle Pitts is going to make it all the way to 10. I think he's the best prospect in this draft. And the notion that Jerry Jones could possibly trade up to draft Kyle Pitts, that makes no sense, because if you're trying to build a roster in a way where you're trying to win a championship, anyone who saw the Dallas Cowboys defense last year, they were nauseated watching that defense, because they were absolutely pathetic on defense. One of the worst defenses that we've seen in history was the Dallas Cowboys last year. So if the Dallas Cowboys are sitting at 10 and Kyle Pitts, I don't know how, if he falls to them, I still think the Dallas Cowboys should go defense, because if you want to, they have enough weapons on the offense. You got Dak coming back. You have Zeke. The offensive line is coming back. You got the 3 wide receivers. If they were to draft anybody on offense, I would say draft an offensive lineman, because that's where their weakness is on offense. Those guys are getting longer in the tooth. They could use some infusion of young offensive talent up front. But they have to go defense to show up that side of the football.
I don't even know why we're talking about this. I really don't. I don't know why we're talking about this topic, because he is not. There's no way that Kyle Pitts is going to last till 10 unless he has a Laramie Tunsil type draft day experience where you're like, whoa, what are these pitches hitting it? What's going on? But outside of that, but because it's Damian Woody, and because this is my boy, I'm going to play devil's advocate because this is a fantastical topic that won't happen. But it's Jerry Jones. It's Jerry Jones. Does Jerry Jones really care about what makes logical sense? No. Jerry Jones is about filling those seats, bringing that sizzle to Dallas, right? Okay, so you talk about Dallas has enough offense. Sure, they have enough. But if Kyle Pitts is behind the quarterback, the best prospect out there, can you really fault Jerry Jones for being enamored with him? Because guess what, guys? Everybody is enamored with Kyle Pitts. And when you talk about teams like the Chiefs and that explosive offense, you don't say they got enough. They don't need, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So wrong for Jerry to covet such a great offensive piece. Come on now. Just embrace it a little bit.
Okay, Kimberly.
I'm gonna go ahead, Sinead. Go ahead, Sinead.
I'm from Texas, and a lot of times we think things that glitter, everything is bigger and better. But at some point, the expectation has to be real. We have the team out there that is ready to win a Super Bowl. And look, I watched that man Kyle Pitts, his pro day. That man is built different. I don't see him dropping to 10. But for the Cowboys overall, I think that, obviously there's recent history with CeeDee Lamb where the Cowboys take the best player available. But, man, what have we been hearing? And Woody said it. Mike McCarthy has said it. The largest change that this team needs to make is defensively. The Cowboys, they allowed the most points in franchise history in 2020. They had the second worst run defense in the NFL. And so, I think defense is where they need to start. If they're going to go offense, I'm not surprised that my boy Woody was talking about the offensive line. Very important, but very on brand, Woody.
You know.
Very on brand.
Of course, I'm going to go with the big dogs up front. That's where you win games at. But listen, I just think Kyle Pitts is the best prospect in this draft, and it's almost impossible for him to tumble all the way down to 10, and for Jerry Jones to even think about trading up to go get a tight end. I think that would just be foolish, considering you just signed Dak to a $40 million a year contract, and all the weapons that they have on the offensive side. They have to go defense. They have to start balancing out this roster and adding more depth. You can't afford, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, to start giving up assets because you got your eyes on one particular person. You need depth on this team.
Damian, the defense can't be any worse. It's going to be better. So it's okay. It'll be better.
All right, well, we know what the Cowboys should focus on, but Damian, there's a lot of people who agree with you as far as Kyle Pitts go. We talked about it yesterday on the show. Mel Kiper Jr. said that Kyle Pitts, he thinks, is the overall second best player in the draft.
Complaining. They're not laying out steps that they can take to change that. And so it's coming off as a complaint because the people that can change it, they're just going to continue to say, well, the revenue isn't there. The revenue isn't there. So if you don't bring in the revenue, we can't up your pay. They're going to keep using that. But the reality is, as true as that is, it's an excuse because everyone says we support women. We support women empowerment. We support women in the workplace. We do this for women. We do X for women, blah, blah, blah. And everyone uses it to their advantage. Yet these women are not using these people that are saying those very things to their advantage.
USWNT star Megan Rapinoe, obviously taking exception to these remarks, and in a recent press conference said the following, quote, "It's really unfortunate that in the position he's in, having all the resources that he has and the ability to have a much more educated opinion, that he just hasn't. Really frustrating. Obviously, he just kind of showed his whole ass and not understanding what we talk about the whole time. You don't think that we've asked for more investment? I mean, what are we screaming about nonstop?" Okay, so we have a lot to unpack here, and here to help us do so, we have ACC Network host Monica McNutt making her first Take debut. Lady, congratulations. Welcome to the show. It's Ladies' Hour. So happy to have you. And obviously a lot to unpack here with these comments. So, Chiney, I want to start with you here. What's your reaction to Draymond's comments?
The only worst thing about being wrong is being loud and wrong. I think Brandon Marshall is sort of learning that right now. The meme.
Hey, Brandon.
Accurate. But I've known. Hey, Brandon. It's all good, Brandon. You gave us a great meme, Brandon. Thank you. Now, I've known Draymond Green for a while. We both played on the World University Games team together for Team USA back when we were in college, which makes this all the more difficult because Day-Day, I mean, he's been on the show with us. He has the right relationships. He has the right people to look to really get answers. So let's set this straight. WNBA players would absolutely love more money, of course, but we understand the economic realities of our league. But, you know, complaints from WNBA players, that's not happening anymore. Do you know why? Well, I've got the answer. I am vice president of the WNBPA, an amazing players association. And in 2020, we ratified a new CBA that addressed our players' concerns. Obviously, salary. For the first time, we have average salaries in 6 figures, which is amazing. That CBA was not just a win for women's hoopers. It was a win for women in the workplace, period. Widely celebrated. More increase in salaries, full paid maternity leave, mental health resources, you name it, we got it. And there's a reason why there's a saying that women have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And if you think that women are not doing the work right now to get our stories told, then you are wildly misinformed. Anyone that supports our game is a real one because they do so with the expectation that they will not get the credit. The women have been, putting in the work and trying to tell their stories, but until we have equity in the rooms that matter most, equity there where representation is there so that our stories actually have enough proximity where people can relate to, then it's going to be hard. And we've been fighting this uphill battle for so long, which is why, I think he really cares and he comes from a place of passion. But the hardest thing is realizing that the platform that you say, it's like, use your platform to empower us, not to say I'm not going to speak on Women's History Month. No, use your platform to amplify those who have solutions instead of just preaching what the problems continue to be. And by the way, those problems are outdated, because if anyone watched the women's tournament, we are moving in a whole different direction.
Yes, absolutely.
I love everything you just said, Sinead. And the funny thing is, the last time the three of us had our first take over, Draymond was on. So when I was watching him, I was like, he really could have called Sinead. He really could have called if he had questions. That's what bothered me the most, because he has access to the answers. He literally has access, the Rolodex to hey, Chanae, hey, Megan, hey, Sue, what's going on? But I actually did, as much as I laughed as he was talking and I shook my head, I did like one thing that he said, which was, people like to say that they support women's sports and women athletes and stuff like that. He's right about that. People love to say it, but do you watch regular season games? Do you watch college? Do you buy the same? Do you buy jerseys? Do you invest it? Executives, do you put the games on? It's not just the equal pay and all that. Like, that aside, there's a bigger issue about the commitment, the support. It's not just financial. Where do you spend your energy? If these games aren't being televised, if you aren't showcasing the draft, if you're not talking about issues that affect women athletes at the same rate, that's part of it too. It's this mushrooming thing. And I'm glad that he spoke, because we're talking about the how he's not connecting all the dots. We're speaking about it, and it continues the conversation, because there are a lot of people sitting on their couch right now like, Draymond had a point. I see exactly what he's saying. If the revenue's not there, the revenue's not there. What you want? But they're not actually acknowledging that, Sue Bird and Chloe Kim and Simone Manuel, Alex Morgan, they started their own website to women are out there trying to create their own content and do things for themselves. And if Draymond doesn't get it, and he's a guy who's got connections, he has resources to the answers, he knows people. How do you expect guys in corner offices who make decisions about programming to actually invest? That's what bothers me. It's a whole bigger thing than just Draymond, but I'm glad he spoke his truth and how he sees it. So Megan and we can all say, have a seat and let's just talk about it a little bit more.
Take a seat.
Okay, so you guys covered just about everything, right? And so what I will say is I just want to shout out a couple of women, similar to what you did, Kimberly, that I know are actually doing the work. There were 2 comments when this initially came down that really stood out to me from women. And actually, I do want to shout out Kareth Burke, who was probably the first person to hear that audio as the sideline reporter for the Golden State Warriors, and she immediately pushed back, right? But then one of the comments that I saw on Twitter was from Devereaux Peters, who played college basketball at Notre Dame. Sinead, I know you remember Dev. She was in the WNBA. She has since moved on. But one of the things that she's doing right now is telling women's stories. She's creating a platform to highlight stories of WNBA athletes. And she shared a very personal thread about being this close in a meeting with someone who had a position to help elevate her platform. And ultimately, it came down to this person not wanting to be involved with the WNBA. I don't know the specifics, but the idea that Draymond not only would get on Twitter, double down in this press conference, and then on Twitter at some of the league's elite stars without acknowledging the work that's being done. I mean, you just have to be better, especially when you reach out and tag people like, I have the solution that no one has ever talked about. So personally, Dre, you should connect with Deb and see if you can amplify her platform. Second, Chanae, your sister, I thought had a tremendous response to this in a press conference following Team USA practice. And she pointed out that so many of us are taught that the word ignorance has a negative connotation. And while that is partly true, sometimes ignorance is just that. You do not know. Now, when you don't know, the volume has to come down just a little bit. But I will say that I don't believe that Dre had, just a tad, y'all. I will say that I don't believe that Draymond Green had ill intentions, but he is ignorant on this topic. And so now, we're still talking about it. You're a name that carries cachet. Please go get informed and then come back with that same energy at a press conference. That's all I want.
And that's not it. Like, you also, you know me, I'm applying pressure because our CBA was ratified on the idea of bet on women and invest in women. Yep. And a lot of people say, well, the revenue is not there. Well, guess what? The demand is. We saw what happened with the women's tournament. We know that the standards of what we see, and I know this is usually compared through the lens of basketball, these are the best women's basketball players in the world in the WNBA, the best in college. We had that whole weight room controversy, and a lot of people realize that, hey, like that floor can be moved up, and it can take little things like you said, you know, amplifying the right stories in the press conferences, or if you actually have the means, not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. And that's why every room we step into, we try to really further the conversation and get actionable items so that we can continue to move the needle forward. And thank you for shouting out Kareth Burke, who does a tremendous job. Thank you for shouting out my big sis, Monica, because she's president of the WNBPA. And let me tell you this. After I saw that Zoom coming off of Chiney Gold Jr. on ESPN Radio, I hit big sis. I was like, sis, you kept it classy, sis. Because we know what is real. The real thing is the genuine energy for the game is there from Draymond, and we appreciate that. And he's always rolled for women hooping. But at this point, if you are not bringing a solution, then it's hard to sort of say that you should use our platform to tell us what we're doing wrong, because there have been women in the trenches fighting this fight forever. Yes. I mean, our league is about to really celebrate 25 straight years, the longest viable women's sports league. And we're excited about it. There's energy for the W coming this season. And one thing that I have personally found is that it takes us. Like, no one will care for this more than us. And so it's our collective action. I mean, literally putting 2 and 2 together, which is why if we're asking for storytelling, y'all stay tuned, because we've got a big story to be told on our network, ESPN Films, that's celebrating the WNBA's 25th season, obviously, but it was the 2020 season that we're covering, and it's all led by women. And that's a beautiful thing. The producers are women. The story will tell the story of the bubble, and it's been amazing to see what the repercussions of the women's activism has been. And we know this because we care about it, and this is what we live. And so if you are truly trying to be an ally, I think it's leaning into that instead of trying to say these are the problems, because the problems are played out at this point. The problems are no longer problems because women are finding solutions to those, and now it's on the rest of society to keep that same energy and keep moving us in that direction.
Well, we love to see women thriving, so thank you to all of you for helping to set the record straight, and also others like you've mentioned, and hopefully it'll help encourage men like Draymond to really understand and not just hear you, but also listen to you so they can get their facts straight. All right, ladies, let's move on. Monica, you're sticking with us, and you are killing it on your First Take debut. Guys, KD got back to action last night and did not miss it.
23, he is coming off the bench tonight.
Gotta put his hand up like, hey, I'm 6'10 and I'm a sweet shooter. Find me. It's money. He looks like Kevin Durant.
I can show you who's boss, show you how to take off. Yeah, sit back, little homie, just to watch.
Kevin Durant's return to the court successful on all fronts.
Kevin Durant, welcome back.
All right, KD returned last night after 23 games out of action. He looked legitimately perfect. We're also looking at LeBron. He's injured for the time being, but his timetable to return inching closer. Both of their teams on a quest to win a title this year. So, Chiney, well, actually, hold on. Monica McNutt, ladies and gentlemen, making her debut on First Take here today. She's also with us for this debate. But Chiney, I do want to start with you here. Who do you think is going to have the bigger impact on their team? Is it going to be LeBron or KD when it comes to winning a title?
Look, this is like making me want to hop out of my chair, because this is so difficult to really discuss, because we all know what KD is. Imagine being so great that you can miss a whole bunch of games, step out onto the floor, do your thing, not miss a shot. And what do we see from Kevin Durant? He did everything. Like, he pushed the rock in transition. He had the mid-range. He knocked down the three. He was playing defense. He was rebounding. Cheat code, unfair. But this Brooklyn Nets team is built so different, with James Harden, with Kyrie Irving, with LaMarcus Aldridge, with Blake Griffin, that I think LeBron James will actually be the one that will have the biggest impact, because he's going to be wearing, and shouldering most of the responsibility for the Lakers to sort of repeat, especially given the pressures of the situation. Right now, he's averaging LeBron 25, 8, and 8. And I know that it's been greatness personified, but also greatness normalized. But for him to be able to try to take down a Brooklyn Nets team that is that loaded, it's going to be crazy. It's going to up his usage. I know Anthony Davis is a talented star and a great running mate, but LeBron James, they go by him. He's the one that will grab the rebound, then push it, then distribute, then take over. And so I see this as the same way we sort of saw the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Warriors in 2016. A team that was so much better, right, the Warriors, but LeBron James having to do the impossible to sort of win a championship. Not saying that he might do it now, but at this point, the load that he is carrying is so much greater. Kevin Durant can go out there and be the icing on the cake. LeBron James will have to put the whole team on his back.
I'm going to say something, ladies, that Stephen A. rarely says to his co-host, Max Kellerman. Shanae, I 100% agree with you.
Oh.
I agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you, girl.
Wasn't sure where that was going.
Because it could have gone a bunch of different ways, right? No, because at the end of the day, look, I think Shanae said it perfectly. The load is just heavier for LeBron. This is why you build your super teams. You can debate whether it's right or wrong and how can teams do this and guys just gang together. But this is why you make the super team. Because if I have to miss 23 games with a tight hamstring, hey, the other two dudes, they can carry the load. Oh, and when I get back, I can smoothly transition right back into my spot and I can do what I do. I love when Durant was talking to our Malika Andrews, another shout out to Malika. When he was talking to Malika after the game, Durant was saying, look, I expected to come out and be comfortable. I've been with these guys. I may have been hurt, but chemistry is not an issue. And so to me, this threesome, listen, everybody doesn't have to do everything all at once. And I think it's a totally different story for LeBron. A lot more is expected of him in LA.
100%, Kimberly. I mean, this really, honestly, is not a question in my mind. Just look at what has happened with these two teams when both respective players went out on injury, right? The Lakers were sitting top 3 in the West-ish. Now we're having a conversation if we're nervous about them potentially having to play in the playoff structure of the playoffs. That's minus LeBron. On the flip side, you look at what Brooklyn has done. I'm not sure where they were in the standings when KD went out, but the conversation was whether or not they could play defense. We started to see glimpses of that, and now they're tied for first in the East, and KD just got back. So you do the math. I mean, I think there's far more pressure on LeBron. However, beyond the makeup of the two teams, I also think Father Time is not in LeBron's favor. And while he's been tremendous to this point, I think he can see the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit brighter than KD can. So I'm excited to see how this one plays out. I do think that of anybody in the league, LeBron is up for the task. And I know, Chanae, you and Wendy were talking about it earlier. The Lakers' ability to defend, I think, really could mix it up. Because when I look at the East, it's the Nets East to lose.
All right, well, not only does LeBron probably want to get another ring for himself, but also if the Lakers were to win another title this year, they will set the record for most all-time titles in the NBA. So they do have a lot to lose this season, ladies. But let's talk about Kawhi Leonard playing for another team in LA, the Clippers. He could potentially become a free agent after this season. He is expected to re-sign with the Clippers, quote, barring a dramatic turn of events, according to The Athletic. Monica, who is under more pressure to win a title with the Clippers? Is it Kawhi or is it Paul George?
Charlie, it's Paul George. Kawhi already has multiple rings, and while we expect him to return, he has shown that he is a mercenary for hire and doesn't need much. So if this situation becomes a little bit untenable for him, and by untenable I mean PG doesn't show up in the playoffs again, or he's not feeling the vibe around the chemistry of this team, it would not shock me at all if Kawhi Leonard was not with this team next year. So I think the onus is on Paul George to show up and to shake off that Pandemic P nickname, which we know he did not like, but you got to perform. It's a results-driven industry, and he has yet to get to the pinnacle of the game in terms of winning a championship. And when we start talking about long-term legacies, like not only just for this year and the continuity of this group, but is that how you want to be remembered if you're Paul George? And I know plenty of athletes are pointing out, happiness beyond the court. But when we talk strictly your basketball legacy, yeah, he was great, but he never quite got there. Whew, that stings. I don't like that.
Yeah, it's very personal. And I'm going to say the names clearly. Obviously, you know, we saw what happened with Russell Westbrook when people said, if you never get a championship, you know how athletes internalize that. And while you might be in a champion in life, you know, when it comes to the court, this is where the pressure really lies, especially now that you're in your prime. And y'all, we're women here, and I love that we all agree. And I know that, you know, at night when we're bored, all doing our adulting type of thing. We check Zillow, we check, you know, real estate, because that's like the new adulting fun thing to do. And when I saw that Kawhi Leonard, I think like bought a house in the Pacific Palisades, I was like, oh, I'm not worried about him no more. He probably wants to be out here. It's all good. And so the answer clearly is Paul George. Now, I really do not like that nickname. That is like especially cruel, pandemic P. Like that is the worst. But I think we have to put respect on Paul George because, you know, if there's an athlete that's bounced back, especially what we've seen in the regular season, he started off on pace for a 50, 40, 90 season. He's still giving you 22 points per game. This is a top tier athlete. Like, put some respect on his name. But the reality is, Kawhi Leonard, I mean, he's good. Like, his legacy is certified. Winning a championship in San Antonio, doing the one and done with Toronto, and by the way, delivering a championship to Toronto, I mean, cultural icon forever. And then now, you know, going back home to Los Angeles, he's good. While Paul George, he has had a probably even more difficult route. You know, we all sort of, it broke our heart to see him get injured the way he did with USA Basketball. He's fought his way back, you know, made a name with himself in Indiana, but now, you know, he's tag teamed with, you know, a guy that we already say has his legacy cemented. They're built, literally built to defend LeBron James and Anthony Davis and any other team that sort of comes their way based on their pedigree defensively as a duo. And so when I look at this duo here in Los Angeles, the Clippers, Paul George is the one that has to prove a lot. Even though he's proven so much to this point, the only thing that can fix that is a championship, and that's why the pressure's on him.
But Janae, you said it, right? Like, when we have this conversation, it will not be left out that he was on a squad that was uniquely built to go and stop the Lakers. Now, if the Clippers don't even end up seeing the Lakers in the playoffs, like, I think that's a whole nother conversation. But I think because, and in a way, he may be a victim of his own success in this, in that he was a guy that was in demand, that could be on a team that was specifically tasked with knocking off another team. But we're not going to forget that in terms of the legacy. Like, the table was set for you to go and perform, and the missing link right now is you performing big time in that moment. But I mean, I agree with you. That's certainly a tough nickname. It has stuck with me a little bit. He's having a much better season, but you know how it goes, Sinead. This is still the regular season. Don't give me Giannis from the past 2 years. We're trying to see what you're talking about come playoff time.
Can I play devil's advocate for a second? Can I play devil's advocate for a second?
Go ahead, girl.
So, all right. Is Kawhi not Batman? Like, is Paul George not Robin? Like, I understand Kawhi's got the rings before and everything, but Tom Brady, he had tons of rings, didn't he? And there was still a ton of, I hate to bring it back to football, but that's what I do. Tom Brady, last year, all we talked about was, the pressure on Brady. He left New England. Now he's in Tampa. Can he do it? The pressure on Brady and the Bucs. Is this season a failure? Like, at the end of the day, like, if you're going to be a mercenary, and I do not mind that. People that know me know I don't mind somebody going to a better